The land had already endured loss, but what followed would change its rhythm forever. Beneath the soil, within rivers and hills that had stood quietly for thousands of years, something was discovered that pulled the world toward Australia with unstoppable force. Gold. At first, it was only a whisper. A glimmer caught in water. A shine hidden beneath mud. But hope has a way of spreading faster than truth, and soon the whisper became a roar. News crossed oceans, leapt between ports, and ignited dreams in distant lands. Men left farms. Families sold everything they owned. Ships filled with strangers chasing the same promise. Australia, once known as a place of punishment, transformed into a land of possibility. The quiet rivers were the first to change. Their banks filled with tents and fires. The sound of metal striking stone echoed through valleys that had known only birds and wind. Day and night, hands dug into the earth, searching for a future hidden in gold. Some found fortune. Most found exhaustion. But hope kept them digging. Towns appeared almost overnight. Paths became streets. Wooden shelters became shops. Melbourne grew rapidly, powered by wealth pulled straight from the ground. Roads and railways spread outward, carrying people, goods, and control deeper into the land. But gold did not belong to everyone equally. Thousands of Chinese miners arrived, disciplined and patient, working land others had abandoned. Their success sparked fear. Difference became a threat. Laws were written to exclude. Violence followed jealousy. The gold fields revealed not only wealth, but the cruelty people are capable of when fear takes hold. While settlers fought over riches, the first peoples faced another wave of destruction. Sacred land was torn apart. Rivers were poisoned. Forests were cleared. Hunting grounds disappeared beneath mines and towns. This was not opportunity for indigenous Australians. It was invasion, repeated once more. Resistance existed, but it was dangerous. Those who fought were punished. Those who spoke were silenced. Survival often meant retreat into memory, into quiet endurance. Yet culture does not vanish. Stories were whispered. Songs survived in fragments. Elders remembered even when the world refused to listen. The land itself held memory, absorbing every footprint, every scar. As the gold began to fade, something permanent remained. Cities stood where bushland once breathed freely. Power had shifted. Control had hardened into law. Children were born who had never known Britain. This land was not exile to them. It was home. A new identity slowly formed, shaped by hardship, ambition, and survival. But while settlers spoke of growth and progress, indigenous lives were increasingly controlled. Movement was restricted. Communities were forced onto missions and reserves. Languages were discouraged. Traditions were treated as obstacles instead of knowledge. Children were taken from families with the belief that culture could be erased, but culture does not disappear. It bends. It waits. It survives. As the years passed, the colonies began to imagine unity. Meetings were held. Debates grew louder. A nation was being designed on paper, but not everyone was invited into its future. When Australia became a nation, celebration filled the streets. Flags were raised. Hope was declared. Yet the first peoples remained unseen in the laws of the new country, their existence unrecognized, their voices unheard. Australia moved forward carrying pride and contradiction side by side. The land had given gold. It had given space. It had given life. And it had absorbed pain, displacement, and silence. Still, it endured. Because this land had survived fire, flood, and time itself. And as the world continued to change, the land waited, holding every story, every truth, knowing the journey was far from over. The new century did not bring peace to the land's memory. It brought speed. Change accelerated in ways no generation before had experienced. Railways cut through country that had once been walked slowly and carefully. Cities climbed upward, reaching for the sky, while the past was pushed further beneath concrete and stone. Australia began to believe in itself as a modern nation. Industry grew. Factories roared. Ports expanded, carrying wool, wheat, and minerals to distant markets. The country grew richer, louder, and more confident. Yet beneath that confidence lived an unease that had never been resolved. For Indigenous Australians, life became more controlled, not freer. Authorities decided where people could live, work, and travel. Wages were withheld for protection. Families were monitored. Culture was treated as a problem to be solved rather than a knowledge system to be respected. Children were taken from their parents under the promise of education and opportunity. Many never saw their families again. They were taught to forget their language, their names, their stories. The pain of those separations settled deep, passing silently from generation to generation. Still, survival continued. Elders held memory like fire hidden under ash. They taught when it was safe. They waited when it was not. Ceremony did not vanish, it adapted. Identity was not erased, it was carried quietly, patiently, through time. As the world beyond Australia descended into conflict, the nation was drawn into wars far from its shores. Young men left farms and cities to fight in places they had never heard of. The land watched them go, knowing many would not return. War reshaped the national story. Courage and sacrifice were celebrated. Loss became familiar. Families waited for letters that sometimes never arrived. Those who returned carried wounds both visible and unseen. Australia learned resilience through grief. At home, women stepped into roles once denied to them. Communities leaned on one another. The country began to understand that strength was not only found in battle, but in endurance. After the wars, change came again, this time through movement of people. Migration increased. New languages filled streets. New foods, music, and traditions reshaped daily life. Australia slowly became more diverse, more complex, more layered. Old ideas were challenged. Policies that once excluded began to weaken. The image of the nation shifted, though not without resistance. Fear of difference lingered, but curiosity grew stronger. And then, voices that had been silenced for generations began to rise. Indigenous Australians spoke publicly about stolen children, stolen land, stolen futures. Marches formed. Protests echoed through city streets. The land itself seemed to listen as truth was spoken aloud. Questions could no longer be avoided. How could a nation move forward while denying its past? How could unity exist without recognition? Change did not come quickly. It never does. But it came. Laws shifted. Conversations opened. Apologies were spoken, heavy with meaning yet unable to undo what had already been done. Healing revealed itself not as an event, but as a long and difficult journey. The land remained constant through it all. Ancient and patient, it held the weight of memory. Every footprint, every scar, every song. It had seen arrival and loss, hope and harm, silence and voice. Australia continued to grow not as a single story, but as many stories moving together. Sometimes colliding. sometimes healing. Always connected to the same ground beneath their feet. The future remained unwritten. And the land waited still, not to forget, but to remember until every voice, old and new, could stand upon it and be heard.